Well, thank you very much for this warm welcome. Thank you, Ron, for putting this great conference together. After 16 years not having been here in Australia, it's good to be back finally and see the changes that have been made or that your country, your beautiful country, has been undergone. And when I left Austria, we had two conferences, one on Austrian economics with Ron Paul, and the other one, our famous free market roadshow touring European cities and fighting bureaucracy, fighting big governments, and defending the taxpayer, the citizen, against those institutions. My friends and fellows asked me to look for a good place to stay when we have to flee Europe. So Australia was supposed to be a good place. Now that I hear that you have problems with the rule of law, the property rights, I have to rethink, or maybe we should rather go to the midsection of your country. I'm looking for advice here. Thank you. Um, Professor Marshall mentioned the illusion of knowledge, and you just mentioned Hayek's Nobel Prize when his Nobel Prize speech was on the pretense of knowledge and the use of knowledge in society as well. So this is something that we might have to look back at and um, something that we have to tell our politicians. So my speech will be more spontaneously, very Hayekian, of course, and less academic as yours. As I'm working in a think tank, and we are also a do tank, and this is the most important thing. I think we're bringing our ideas that matter, that you have written down here, into practice. And this is our foremost task. But coming back to the moral foundations of modern West and of Western civilization, actually, what are the values that we need to defend and that we here in this room have been defending all the time? Um, we need not go back to the Scottish Enlightenment, to Smith, Hume, and Ferguson, who explained the success of and growth concepts of the spontaneous free order. The Austrians built on these findings, on this solid soil, and some academics even argue that we should go back to the Spanish scholastics. I just say, since we have the 50th anniversary of Hayek's Constitution of Liberty, that we just look in there and look what he said about coercion, because these are the things that these are the problems we are currently facing. State that is coercing us, big governments that are coercing us. So this very important work that he wrote, that was published 50 years ago, on individual freedom, the rule of law, and the protection of property rights are at stake right now, and we need to keep this in mind in order to remain free, individually free, because all of us know that we only realize that these values are so important to us when they are taken away. And the governments are slowly but surely undermining those things. And we need to stand up and warn everybody. So this is one of our tasks. But just to define those values that are being eroded or undermined, we need to look at what are those moral foundations. It's individual freedom and liberty. It's the achievement principle. And I mentioned achievement principle for one good reason. Coming from Europe, I know what students, what kids learn on achievement principle. Basically zero, nothing. And this is something that we need to bring back to our families, to our societies. Self-responsibility, another virtue. No way. Everybody else is responsible, not myself. Competition. At least we in good old Europe know, I don't know how bad it is in Australia, but I assume it might be the same, that competition is only good in sports. Whenever we play soccer, football, or skiing, then competition is allowed. But in the business world, competition has a bad notion. We need to keep this in mind. Sound economics, and I will concentrate on that, because having had this so-called financial crisis that is turning our lives upside down, we need to look back and go back to the principles of economics. Democracy, another virtue that has been lost, and of course, trust. So, what puts those virtues, what puts those foundations of modern civilization at risk? It's wars, it's communism, it's the big welfare state that I've mentioned, it's big governments, it's public debts and the hidden liabilities, it's the greed for votes that created this financial crisis by redistributing, by giving people houses that they could never afford, for example. It's also the greed for money that created this crisis. By the way, who knows how many business cycles did we have since 1800? Can anybody give me a suggestion, an assumption? 200. But too many. In 200 years? Another question? Another? Those economic historians? It was 40. Yeah, 40 business cycles, exactly. So we have not learned from these business cycles. We have not learned from the Austrian school. We have not learned from Mises, who in 1922 pointed out the Austrian business cycle theory, something that needs to be brought back, not only to academia. However, another thing that is threatening our society is the incompetence and the lack of education, the lack of understanding of risk, of uncertainty, of knowledge creation, of how knowledge is being created. I mean, Hayek wrote great articles on this. He gave us this great, not only his works on it, how knowledge is being created, but it's a legacy that we need to put into practice as well, to tell the people. It's the way of how we innovate, of how businesses grow, of how enterprises grow, entrepreneurial spirit. These are values that need to be defended and to be multiplied, put into society. And also